Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Clarissa.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's Friday.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I'm so excited to have you on this episode of the Oasis Show. You and I kind of got to know each other when the Oasis program expanded to St. John, and you do a lot of work inside our campus talking to the students. And
Yep.
but why don't you tell everybody what organization you work for and what exactly you do for the businesses in your region?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Mark Breen. I work for Economic Development Greater St. John, or EDGSJ, as we
Mhm.
would call it, because we love our acronyms in economic development. I am the Economic Development Officer with EDGE. I've been in the role since 2012, so I'm going into my 9th year this spring. So been around the block a little bit. Yeah, so I don't know how much your viewers know of EDGE, but we are the economic development agency for the Greater St. John region.
Okay.
So we support St. John, we support Grand Bay Westfield, we support Quispamsis, we support Rothsay, and we also support St. Martin's.
Okay.
So kind of those surrounding communities, any businesses or entrepreneurs that are in those regions, we would help support.
Is that new? Is that new, or were you always for the region, or were at a time were you just for the city?
Yeah, so it's not new. We have always, so we're previously, some people might know us as Enterprise St. John.
Okay,
So
right.
we went through a rebranding about 2 years ago, and we intentionally said we want to be known as Economic Development Greater St. John. So to
Okay.
talk about, that we support the entire region. So the entire time I've been here, so 8.5 years, we've always supported all 5 regions.
Okay.
So so we're a nonprofit. So we get funding from all those 5 municipalities. We also work with the province and ACOA and the federal government on various projects.
Okay.
So that I'll talk a little bit about once we kind of get into what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of our organization. We're really here to help support and drive economic development. So things like helping to support the creation of more jobs,
Mhm.
helping support business growth. We do some investment attraction as well.
Mhm.
So maybe I'll talk just real quickly, if I could, about we have kind of 4 main pillars
Yes.
we work on.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Talk about those 4 pillars and kind of what that means, because it's not just, you're not just helping, startups, you're helping economic development as a whole. So
yeah,
so let's
yeah.
chat about that.
The way I would describe it when I tell people, my elevator pitch is I help people start and grow businesses. And that could be anyone from, I've had people starting a hot dog cart,
Mhm.
literally a hot dog cart, right up to multi-million-dollar IT businesses, and then everything in between.
Right.
So our organization doesn't, we don't kind of pick sectors. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, I need help starting a restaurant, we're going to work to help them.
Mhm.
Somebody else comes in and says, hey, I have a new medical device design. Can you help me with that? We would help there as well. So we try to keep a fairly broad approach to those folks that we help.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just to make sense. So yeah, so we have 4 real pillars we work on. The first one is, and this is probably what we'll spend the most of the time talking about,
Mhm.
is entrepreneur development.
Okay.
So really about helping people start and grow businesses at that really early stage, like even pre-start, before they've even started. And we have a number of programs and initiatives there. We also do kind of investment attraction and innovation. So we work very closely. So we don't have the kind of budget to jump on planes and fly all over the world trying to attract companies here. So we work closely with our partners at Opportunities New Brunswick. And they're the ones who have kind of been out in the world looking for bringing new companies here, and we help coordinate with them once they get here. So help provide them real estate information for the city, help connect them with other, perhaps supply
Right.
chain partners, things like that.
Yeah.
We also do a couple of things around innovation, and maybe I'll talk about that a little bit after specifically. So investment attraction and innovation, that's another pillar.
Mhm.
Another important pillar that we use is called workforce development.
Okay.
So, I'm sure you've heard, as many people have heard, that we really, a lot of companies are lacking in the talent that they need um, for certain things. And that may have changed a little bit over the pandemic, but it's certainly something that we see, and we try to kind of connect the dots there. And then the final pillar we have is we're marketing the region. So again, we work with our partners to really market this specifically as a good place to do business. So for example, Discover St. John, one of our partner organizations, they would market more so on the tourism and getting visitors to come. We focus more on the marketing for business.
For business, right?
Yeah. So that's a big mouthful, but those are the four pillars that we do as an organization, and each one of those areas has different projects that we have to kind of support that. So I hope, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good.
So out of those four pillars, what do you think is is there one that, is, as you kind of look at the four pillars, is there one that you're like, well, that's, that one's always hot and that one's always a hot topic? Or are they pretty much equal?
Well, for me, it's the one that has the most, they're all important, I think, and this is what we have to recognize. All of those things play together for economic development. Economic development's a very broad topic, but of those, entrepreneur development are probably one of the ones that is kind of the one that we see the most activity.
Right.
That we see, people wanting to come in and wanting to open a new business, or they want to grow their existing business. So they're a small business, maybe been operating for, 3 or 4 years, and they want to expand, or they want to get some new piece of equipment, or they just need help kind of, hey, what do I do now?
Right.
And
I have to say, I mean, I lived in St. John, 20 years ago. And the St. John that I lived in 20 years ago is certainly not the St. John of today. And I say that, and people say, what are you talking about? And because, when I think of, I, worked in South End, lived, in Milledgeville, and driving through there, Uptown wasn't as vibrant and as it is today, with so many businesses coming about. And every time you're there, you see a new business, and so many young people, jumping in and, having that courage to start something. So is that just me seeing that, or is that really happening in St. John?
No, I mean, I've seen it even in the time that I've been here, the 8 years I've been here. And, so we have an office on 40 King Street. And if you go right around the corner, we used to have this old alley, Grannon's Alley. I'll just use that as an example. And when I started here, there was really nothing on it. Now you go there and you have just a mix of restaurants. Picaroons is there, their bar, really interesting coffee shops like Rogue, Port City Royal, and then galleries are starting to kind of pop up around that.
Yes.
And then you're also seeing new development take place. So there's a new residential development that's going to be it's starting actually right now on the corner, right on the corner of Canterbury Street.
Okay.
So you're really seeing this really interesting vibe that you're bringing a lot of more young people, but you're also seeing older people move back in from the suburbs. So people who may have, their family grew, their kids grew, they're kind of empty nesters now, and they're like, listen, I'd rather move uptown and be within walking distance of bars and restaurants. So you're really seeing that kind of resurgence. Uptown, and it's really been happening for many years. A lot of people are doing a lot of work, like Uptown St John is another organization we work with. Nancy Tissington and her team, they've been doing a fantastic job. Really kind of supporting the Uptown businesses. So I would really encourage. I know people outside of St. John often have, I go to Fredericton every now and then. My girlfriend's from Fredericton, and this St. John's stinky and it's always raining, and we do get some rain, but I would encourage anyone to come and check out some of our restaurants. particularly Uptown, but there's also a lot of other beautiful spots all throughout the city.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I only say that because, my memory of, 20 years ago compared, and it's always great to compare. I mean, we can compare any city in the province as to what it
Sure.
was like. And, I mean, I'm in Miramichi and I can compare it to 20 years ago versus what it is now.
Sure.
I mean, so it's great to see that happening in Uptown St. John. Now, when you talk about entrepreneur development, I mean, that's, Oasis has a mentorship program, and,
Sure.
sometimes you folks send people us and we send people to you. But what is I always love asking people who are kind of in this world of, what is the number one need? Now you're seeing people who are, coming and kicking tires thinking, maybe someday I would like to start this. But what are you seeing as the biggest challenge for, startups right through to established businesses in today's, in not just, well, we can look at the pandemic, but we also just look at
Sure.
in today's world. What's that biggest challenge that you're seeing?
Yeah, and let me answer that two ways differently, because you ask, what are the biggest things that I see that people are needing, and I'll talk about it. So from somebody who wants to newly start a business, primarily what people think they need, and this is the difference: what people think they need versus what they really need.
Yes.
Often they think that they need capital. So I need money to start my business. I don't have, most people don't have $50,000 sitting in the bank just waiting to invest in a business.
Yeah.
So oftentimes they will come to us and they'll say, where are the loans, where are the grants, etc. And typically how this, the way it works is, if somebody's interested in starting a business, it's because they have passion around a particular, whatever it is. So maybe I'm passionate about food and I'm a trained chef, so I want to start a restaurant. Or maybe I'm a computer programmer and I'd really like to not work for, a bigger company. I want to work for myself. So I'm going to start a computer business. So what we say to folks is, so they'll come in and I say, okay, have you validated your idea? And very, very, very few people have done that. Yeah. And so what we think people really need is to go out and validate their idea. Yeah. And what we mean by that is, okay, so I want to open a coffee shop. So if I had, I'll give you an example. If I had a quarter for every time somebody came to me and said, I want to open a coffee shop, I can probably retire. So what I always say to people in that, I said, okay, where we're sitting right now, I can get coffee, in a 2 or 3 block radius. There are probably 40 places I could go to get coffee. Or tea or those kind of things, not including just sitting here and going and making it myself.
Right.
So what's your differentiator? Why are people going to want to come to your coffee shop? And oftentimes what we'll hear is, well, I'm going to offer the best customer service. Well, I would suggest everybody says that they offer the best customer. I mean, if you go to Tim Hortons, they're going to say they give great customer service, and they do. Second cup, etc. So that's not really a differentiator. And then people kind of stop and scratch their head. Well, I'm going to offer the best coffee. I said, okay, well, that's a subjective thing, because there might be coffee that you like that I don't like, etc. Yeah. So the reason I'm asking these questions for people very early on is I'm trying to help them come to that light bulb moment where, hey, I don't really know what what the market wants,
right, and
what problem I'm trying to solve. So that's the one thing we ask, and we see some of our mentors, Dan Dworen's our entrepreneur in residence for our incubator program. He always asks that. It's a great point. What problem are you trying to solve?
Right.
So as opposed to saying what kind of, what is your solution or what's your product, you need to go out and talk to potential customers and that. So that's the biggest thing I think I would recommend people to do, is to go out and get as much feedback as they possibly can from potential customers. And then
sometimes that's the hardest part, right? So, when people come in and they say, where's the money, right? Or where's the free money, which there's no such thing as free money, but where's the money? But it's the hardest part, is to go out and ask and tell them to go talk to other people about why they want to do what they want to do. That's where like the most resistance is with probably, right? Because they feel it's good, but they need to talk to other people.
Yeah, I think you got to be very careful as an entrepreneur if you particularly at that early stage. I mean, it's a fine line. Obviously, you have to be passionate enough about your business and believe in yourself and what your offering is to do it.
Yeah.
And that's important. But at the same time, you can't drink your own Kool-Aid so much to just think you're the best thing ever. You might be, but let's get out there and validate that, and let's make sure. And clients that do that, they always seem to have a much better leg up.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly when they go for financing. So we have a program called an impact loan.
Right.
It's something ACOA has given us a pot of money and said, hey, you can, please administer this and give out loans to new entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. So this loan is intended for people that might not be able to get financing from a bank. So really early stage. So they could come in, and what we ask them for is a business plan and a cash flow. Mm-hmm. And then we help them prepare that, and then we send that. We have a volunteer committee of professionals, entrepreneurs that kind of evaluate those plans and then approve or deny. And pretty much every time I see a plan, it doesn't have nearly enough information in it.
Right.
So, in order to get the information, that kind of market research that you need, that's really what we're talking about here. It's market research.
Right. Yes.
But it's kind of direct market research, talking to people, documenting that, finding out, what their challenges are, and then being agile enough to kind of pivot your idea to take that into account, right? What's important.
Right. And I always say to people when they talk about market research, or when someone asks me my opinion, I always say, and don't talk to your family.
Yeah.
Right? Don't talk to your family, because, I mean, like, they might either be very honest, or they might, just love you so much that they're going to tell you it's a good idea. So, don't, if you're going to talk to 12 people, make sure that it's a good variety of people.
Yeah, like get out, and I mean, it's one of the nice things we have now around, social media. We're so connected, is that you can have conversations with people. And in my experience, most people are pretty willing. If you go to someone and say, hey, I'm really, I'm trying to start my business. I'm pretty new. Could I get 10 or 15 minutes of your time? Just ask a couple of questions and your opinion on things.
Yeah.
Most people would like that. They like to talk about their opinion. They like to help.
Yeah.
Where it can get more challenging for some folks is depending on the industry you're in. So a coffee shop's fairly easy because most people drink coffee. But if you're in a very specialized field, like say, a client that only services a very niche sector, like maybe you do marine aquaculture.
Right.
That's the business you're in. Well, it's going to be very hard to go out and talk to 50 customers who are doing that. So sometimes you have to get creative on how you get the feedback from those folks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
But that would be the biggest thing I would tell any entrepreneur, is as opposed to going out thinking you have all, the answers you want to get going. Figure all that stuff out ahead of time, and it takes a lot of risk out of the business after you've launched.
Yeah. And that would be, for my second part of my question, that would be, that's important any day, right? Any day you want to start a business, but even more so now, that we're, 6 months into, a pandemic, that's even more important, if anyone's looking to start a business. And people will say, oh, it's not a great time to start a business. And it might not be, but it might be if if you were agile, like you say, enough to pivot.
Yeah, and it depends on the industry, right? Like, I'll give you an example. There was, unfortunately, there was a business that went out here. It was called the Offline Board Game Cafe here in St. John.
Yeah.
Wonderful business. The owner was fantastic, very creative. And unfortunately, this pandemic came along, and the business couldn't continue to operate.
Yeah.
But it was doing very well before the pandemic. So the market forces behind it haven't changed. There was still demand for what they wanted to do. So at some point, presumably this pandemic, we're going to come out of it and people are going to be able to gather in greater numbers again. So that the fundamental demand for that is still there.
Right.
That hasn't changed. When to open a business like that. But the other side of this, we always talk about the pandemic as being a terrible thing for business. And, for some business, it has been. So if you're in the restaurant industry or tourism, they've been hit very hard. But other businesses have actually done better. So we just, I saw an article yesterday, about St. John. We've had more businesses open during the pandemic than close.
Yes, and I've noticed that, just in, being in St. John, but, just in reading as well, the different types of businesses that have opened, right?
Yeah, so what I would say, and I was saying this before we started, recording, is the pandemic has really accelerated things. So if you had again, other than certain industries, obviously tourism, some restaurant, but if your business was struggling before the pandemic, I would say that the pandemic probably is just going to hasten, that business, unless you make some changes. But there are other people who have pivoted, who have done very well and actually have grown their business. And I spoke to one business owner, back in the midst of the pandemic. I'm talking like April and May, when everything was shut down, that had done 25% more revenue than the previous year. Because of the changes they made. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about for business is this is the one thing that we've come to realize during the pandemic. You have to make it easy, first of all, to be found. You have to make it easy for your business to be found. And you have to make it easy for your customers to do business with you. And the companies and the businesses, and I don't care if you're Amazon or a smaller shop, if you make it easy to be found, so you're easy to find online, you have a really strong social media presence, you're responsive to inquiries and clients, and then if you've invested in like a digital, an e-commerce platform would be a great idea. You try to take as many of the barriers away as you can for your clients to buy your products, your customers to buy your products.
Right.
Those are the companies that are doing well. Those are the people that are really kind of diving, and it doesn't matter the industry, like restaurants, they've had to kind of pivot to this takeout model, working with like Skip the Dishes and DoorDash and things like that. Those are the ones that I think are going to come out of this doing well. And by the way, the other nice thing I would say to a small business, when you're investing in that digital, in that digital storefront, that good e-commerce website, you're also enabling your business to kind of go outside the local market. If you can sell your products online, there's no reason you can't ship to Toronto or Calgary or, wherever.
Right. So, and that's what I've noticed too, I mean, in Miramichi, we have as in other cities, we have a very strong shop local, right? And, and people, some businesses, if they're in small towns, they relied on that shop local, but then all of a sudden, people could get their orders come right to their door. So that local is now not, it's grown, right? I was purchasing things like, I want to give a shout out to the NB Box because, that's one of the companies. I mean, before the pandemic, I kind of knew about them, but I was like, do I have a need for that? But then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and everyone continued to have birthdays. So, you have to get them a gift somehow. And, I mean, I've talked to Ingrid about that and the growth that she's seen and how she was able to pivot and adapt. And we've seen a lot of businesses do that as well, right? And really open up and really see outside the box, of how they did business.
Yeah, and that's a great example of, I would suggest MB Box, and I've been a customer as well for them and had great service. Is that they really embrace that online component. They have a really strong, Facebook. I know Ingrid does a lot of outreach, talking to customers. They're on Instagram. It's really kind of, I would say it's in their DNA. It's right in there, and it would enable and so they're enabled to grow because they're putting the right tools and platforms in place in order to service customers, and again, make it easy for them to be found and both buy from them.
Yeah.
So that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone, either starting or already in a small business. You have to have an online presence.
Mm-hmm.
I often laugh because through the years, you'll see, particularly like a retailer or restaurant, people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars designing this lovely storefront, with, awesome interior and, it's just fantastic looking,
Mm-hmm.
but won't do anything on their website.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get discovered on your website. Most people are going online before they make a purchase decision, or when they're looking for recommendations, they're going to go online.
Mm-hmm.
Show me the best restaurant in St. John, or, I need to buy a new couch. I want to go, people are investigating and they're using the internet to look these things up.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that your business is in that conversation.
Yeah. And that is so true. I mean, I talked to a small, like a small business owner owns a restaurant, and, he said, I'm totally fine. Like, this was back when we were still not really open. He said, what, I think I'm totally fine. He said, deliveries, takeouts, like I find I can do them really well. And, he said, it's just not something that we ever had. So I can flip my model and be able to do that. And if my restaurant doesn't open, I will be okay, right? Because he's seen that, it's that the whole restaurant thing, seating people and staff and making sure, and just like now the cleaning protocols and stuff like that, he almost wants people for takeout and delivery, right? So it's yeah. So that's really great. I mean, two big pieces of information, do your validate, do your market research, have an online presence. So, and you and I could talk all day about this, but how can people, what's the best way for people to reach out to your organization? And is there a process, or can they just, request information, or how can people connect with you, Mark?
Yeah, so I would suggest, I'd be happy to, if somebody wants to email me, I can direct them. So, mark@edgsj.com.
Okay.
It's pretty simple, but, I'd suggest you go to our website. And when you look at our website, we have all our pillars broken down. And if, probably the bulk of your listeners, are probably the people watching this, are going to be kind of entrepreneurs or thinking about starting a business. So it kind of lays out some of our programs there.
Right.
So we have a number of different programs that will help people to kind of start a business. And we also have some programs that would help people grow a business.
Okay.
So small business. And the way I always describe it and the way I think about it is, we have programs, but we're also here to support and help. And one of the things that I think we do really well at EDGSJ, because we're a small nonprofit, we're not a big corporate company, we're not the government. So what we do is we work a lot with our partners. So for example, this conversation right here, MBCC is one of our great partners. So if I have, a client that comes in and says, hey, Mark, I would really like to start, a microbrewery.
Mm-hmm.
For example, well, then I could reach out to you, Clarissa, and I could say, hey, I have somebody here who wants to start a microbrewery. Do you have anyone in your network that maybe you would want to be a mentor for?
Yeah.
Or I reach out to another contact I have, who maybe is in the packaging bottling, and said, hey, would you mind, meeting with this person for an hour to talk to them about their idea and maybe give them some tips.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of our value comes in, being able to work with our partner organizations.
I agree. Yeah.
There are many, right? So.
And we can't do everything for everybody, but we need to know a little bit about a lot of things so that we can put people, direct people to the right bucket, right? And we each know our strengths, and it's good to know that, organizations like ours work together for the betterment of the entrepreneurs in the province, right? Not just in, the St. John area, but for the whole province, right? Because the information that you give on your website, or even like, the pieces of advice that you gave here today, help somebody, right? And, yeah, working together. So.
And I think one of the things I would, it's my approach to it is, we have a lot of programs. Like, and when I say we, I don't mean Edge. I mean,
Right.
programming, and
Yeah.
there are government programs, and it can get very confusing for someone. Even I've been doing this 9 years, and I'm still learn new things every day.
Yeah.
So what I try to suggest to people is, what I think people need is kind of a warm embrace. When you think about somebody at that stage when they're starting a business, first of all, they may not know anyone else who has ever started a business. They might not have anyone in their family who has ever started a business. They might, some of their friends and family might say that they're crazy for wanting to start a business.
Yeah.
Well, why would you leave your day job, or just go get a job and that's nice and secure? So, they're actually being, kind of encouraged not to start a business. So it's a very, they're vulnerable. It's a vulnerable time for people. So what I always try to make sure we do, and I think we do a pretty good job at it at Edge, is to really give people that kind of warm embrace to say, hey, we might not have all the programs and the services to help you, but we're going to make sure that you get it.
Yeah.
And that you get the support you need. And I'm going to try to do whatever I can to make sure, you can't always help everyone. But you're trying to do that in such a warm, kind of really person-to-person approach.
Yeah. Not
kind of a cold, kind of sterile website. Because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
They come in and they're like, I'm just starting. I don't even know the questions I need to ask. So I think you really have to approach with a lot of empathy.
Absolutely. And I think too, I always say that, it's just like a hand on your back to guide you through the process. Absolutely. And, it's so often a lot of people are met with, no, we don't do that here. Yeah. And then, but they won't even, but it's also to say, well, we might not be able to help you, but we might know somebody who can, right? Just so that they don't feel lost. Because you just never know, and that it's going to be that next great idea, right, that somebody has in their head, and they just don't know how to get it out and get it on paper. So,
and what I've been told, as a province, so people who come out of province, that, not to pat ourselves on the back, but we tend to do a pretty good job of that, I think. We have partners at ACOA and Opportunities of Brunswick, NBCC, probably hundreds of partners if we start listening to them. And I find, I don't know if it's just our nature here, but people seem to be pretty good at that, for the most part.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. This has been very, very interesting. Like I said, we could talk forever, but if anyone needs anything in your region, I encourage you to reach out to Mark, reach out to EDGSJ, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great fall, everyone.